All right, good afternoon, everybody. If you have questions, just put it on the chat. Again, this afternoon, we're gonna work on our real estate template, right? Our purchase contract templates that is in zipForms. If you are using Glide, okay, put it on the chat so I know who is using Glide, and we'll do a separate training for that. But specifically, we're using zipForms. Why do I use zipForms? Because that's the standard that we've been using. Glide, we had the opportunity to get onto Glide a couple years ago. It's a little bit easier to use Glide, but most of us have been so used to zipForms, and that's what CAR recommends. So that's why we're using it. Okay, so zipForms, right, is run by Lone Wolf. So that's that's a company that's runs zipForms for us. So let's look at zipForms. So when we talk about zipForms, okay, that's the CAR contracts. Okay, Glide they have zipForms also. Okay. But the main thing is, it's like between App Safari and let's say Google, what do you call that? Another browser, like like Internet Explorer. Okay, so that's how you should look at it. Both are good. It's up to you which one you want to use. You can use it on any platform, also on your phone. So let's look at your templates, right? So what are templates? Templates are shortcuts, right? Most of you guys that I can see here should have your real estate templates or your zipForms templates that you've done in the past. Okay? Since there were new forms released last week, if you have the templates that we created before, we're gonna double check to make sure that the system automatically updated those forms and removed the old ones. Okay, because the old forms are no longer available, right? You need to be using the current forms. In the old days, we would have the old forms, let's say, they're been pre-printed or something. But nowadays, it's automated and it's updated automatically. So there's no way you can use the old forms unless you previously pre-printed it or it's in an old file. All right, so I'm gonna open up my zipForms so you guys can see it, okay? Oh, before that, okay, so you guys should see car.org, right? So this is how we access it, right? Do not go to zipforms.com, go to car.org, right? Log in with your NRDS number, your 2065 number, typically, unless you use something else. So once you enter, it should say your name up here, right? If you guys ever want to, see, if you want to take a, what do you call that? See if you can make it to this screen where, like this gentleman, right? If you click on his name, you can submit an application. I've been trying, haven't made it. My wife made it. A couple of our agents have made it, not me, right? So if you want to, just click on the name, right, and you submit an application, okay? All right. Once you log in, right? So I'm just gonna show you, okay? You see this pop-up screen on the right-hand corner, important update, right? Please click on Learn More, right? When you learn more, right? So this is everything, that has to do with the new forms, right? Spend some time in here. Take a look at this town hall on car forms, right? So in this training, you guys may want to go in here, but again, that's up to you, okay? So when you see that pop up, click on Learn More, you'll jump on the screen and you'll see it, okay? On the bottom here, it says Car Buyer Representation Residential Listing Agreement Bundle, okay? So I want everybody on this call to click here first, right? And then sign up for this class, okay? It's typically, $49 for members, right? But it's going to be free. You see here, car members, this product is free for members. So go through the application process, okay? It should be free, okay? When you sign up, okay? It should be free, okay? Even though it says, the price, right? I want you guys to sign up for it. Okay? So please sign up for it, okay? So I'm just gonna go back. Okay, so sign up for that and spend some time where it's, like I said, the town hall, right? This has been happening like every 2 days. This is, from our car attorneys. These are the recordings from it. Click on watch, okay? Go from the, the latest one, which is last Friday, okay? Actually, they don't have last Friday yet or last Thursday. So, yeah. So, just watch whatever the most recent one is. and then you can go backwards if you want to to listen to what has been discussed also. All right, some of the Q&As. All right, so what we're going to do now is get to zipForms. Okay, so make sure you guys do that. Okay, so zipForms, right? You guys see my zipForms, my transactions? Yes. You guys see it? I'm assuming, right? So we're on zipForms, right? Yes or no? You guys see it? Jackie?
No.
Yes.
I don't see
Yeah,
the special town halls, not the forms.
Thank you. Let me stop it and let me share it again. Yeah. Thank you for speaking up. Okay. So now you guys should see my zipForms, right?
Yes,
Okay.
we do.
Perfect. Okay. So typically this is where we're going to be, right? Right. This is where we are. Now, you're usually going to be in transactions if you're creating transactions, right? But for now, we're going to work on templates. So make sure you click on templates. Okay. So once you click on templates, you guys should have three. One is what I call residential purchase, the new buyer representation forms, and then the residential listing. Okay. Don't worry about the others. You should have residential listing, the buyer rep forms, and the residential purchase. Okay. These are templates. So in your templates, right? So let's just take a look at the easiest one would be the RPA. Okay. So let's look at the purchase agreement, right? You guys should always have a cover sheet. Okay. You guys can see here the RPA. I have 724. It automatically updates it. So if you're logged on to your zipForms right now, you should see, 724. It will grab the latest forms in your templates. In your transactions, if you wrote an offer, let's say last month, right? It would have last year's date. It's not gonna update this year, okay? If you're gonna write a new offer, it's gonna use the forms that was released this month, okay? So it doesn't go backwards. It doesn't correct old transaction forms. It goes forward, okay? So now, as you can see here, it has the BRBC, right? And then also, and some other miscellaneous ones, right? So let's just look at the cover sheet, right? Remember, most of you guys have done this already. So, but let me just double check, right? If you haven't done the cover sheet yet, right? You will notice there is no buyer name, there is no seller names. I did ask you guys to check these boxes, right? That way this will show up on other areas, right? Of the form. Okay, so this is how my template looks like. This is the cover sheet. As you can see, there is no property information. Okay? You don't need a property information here in templates. In transactions, you need to have a buyer name and a property address in order for you to print it. Okay. So the escrow information, I pick Fidelity most of the time, so that's why it's there. Now on the third page, the buyer broker information, this should always be pre-filled in all your templates. Because imagine having to retype this every single time, right? It's a chore. So I want you guys to, when you do the cover sheet, make sure that this information is already correct. As far as phone numbers, cell numbers, right? Just use your one number, which is everybody's cell number, right? Because most of us, even though we have a desk in the office, we don't use the phone number there because we want our clients just to remember one phone number. If you know your fax, if not, ask your front desk about your fax number, okay? Although we rarely use that now. So just make sure all this information is correct. Your DRE and the office DRE, right, is correct. Nothing on the seller, okay? On the title, which is similar to escrow, should be the same information. I already have Fidelity because more than 50% of the time, the contracts I write will have Fidelity on it. For disclosure source, which is your natural hazard disclosure company, that should say it, right? You can put JCP reports, right? So on the home warranty, right? Just put Fidelity if that's who you want. There's many others, right? So make sure that that's done. And nothing else. Okay. So that's how my cover sheet is. This cover sheet is the same on the buyer representation agreement. Now on the listing, right? You need to transfer this information to the seller's broker because when on listings, you're the seller's broker. So that would be here, right? This is the purchase agreement. So that's why the buyer broker is me, right? So gonna leave the screen. I hit save. Okay. All right. So now let's look at the actual RPA, right? So this is the residential purchase agreement, right? Again, this is for 1 to 4 units, which is 90% of the time. That's what we're writing on, right? Let's look at the RPA. Okay. On the RPA, as I said before, you guys have done this already, right? So we're just gonna double check a couple things, okay? So on the agency, remember I told you guys to check the first buyer because you always have one buyer. So it's one less check box later. Some people will check both of them already and then uncheck later if there's only one buyer. I go the opposite. I tell you guys, check one. Intero, my name automatically, right? Because on the cover sheet, this is already there. My DRE, the office DRE, automatic, right? In the olden days, some fields didn't automatically pre-fill. Nowadays, it's pretty seamless now. So most things do update and do pre-fill. So that's the agency. You guys should know what the agency disclosure says, right? So here's the RPA. As you can see, there's nothing on top, right? Because if I put an address here, it will show up on all my other contracts. I don't want that, right? If I put a buyer name, it will pre-fill all my other contracts. The only thing that should be pre-filled here, as you guys can see.
So if my brokerage DRE number is not there, I should fill it in this template, correct? Right.
Correct. Now you should go back to your cover sheet, right? Your cover sheet and fill it in there. So that way you fill it in your cover sheet, you'll fill in all the other pages after.
Okay, great.
Because if you just type it in here, it may or may not transfer properly. Okay.
Okay.
So that's why that that buyer broker information on the cover sheet is very important.
Great.
Right? So I checked these boxes already because most of the time I'm not a dual agent, right? Most of the time, the listing agent is going to be different from my company, right? But if it is, it's easy enough for me to put interior real estate and then the lot here. I just got to get his DRE, and that's usually on the MLS. And then if I just check this box later, you can see how it automatically moves all the X's, right? So again, it's easy to move it, individually, right? Because it's one or the other, right?
Yeah, you are writing the offer, correct?
Yeah, correct. So if you're writing the offer, this is how it should look like most of the time. Remember, this is a template. We're not writing an offer. We're just pre-filling certain things, right?
So you can apply the template, then you can change accordingly when you are writing the offer.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I did a class earlier, about how to do your template. So make sure if it's not auto applying, make sure you let me know and I'll show how to auto apply it. I can show that later. Okay. As you can see, no purchase price, close of escrow, typically 30 days. So that's a part of my template, 30 days. So on the first page, this is all you fill out, what you see here, okay? And again, as I said earlier, this is being recorded. So you guys will get this link, the recording link later today, including the one we did this morning. So after that, okay, the only other thing I want you guys to put here, where it says here within, I want you to put 1, right? Because within 1 business day after acceptance, I want your offer to be strong, which means that you're telling the buyer, are you able to deposit your EMD by tomorrow? Is the cash already in your account? So that's why you put 1 day here. If you're writing an offer on my listing, I'm going to counter you to make that 1 day. I'm not going to wait 3 days for you to deposit. I want it just 1 day. So that's part of your template, okay? So your template, 30 here, and then 1 over here, okay? You guys got that? Everything else, blank for now. That's part of your template. All right, let's go to the second page. Remember those X I showed you guys? Those for the buyers and sellers. You can see this. Buyers is green, sellers red, okay? Even though on the cover sheet, they were like black, but that's how it looks, okay? That's where the X shows up. Now remember, if you're writing an offer today, pay attention to G3, okay? Technically, it's item 3G, right? 3G3. But technically, if you can see page 2, G3, I'm circling it here, you need to check that box. So make sure you check that box now, okay? What it will do is we'll get this form, SPBB, okay? This is where now you're asking the seller to pay you as the buyer broker a certain amount based on your BRBC. So check that box, okay, guys? All right. The other thing that you need to do, okay, we're not going through the contract to understand this. That's in the training already. You guys should know that. That's on the previous emails from last week. Everything else is as written. Now, on L, I want you guys to pay attention on L. If you're writing offer with contingencies, I suggest you guys already pre-fill 10, 7, 7, 7 up here, right? The newest thing, okay, that you need to pay attention to, if you have the old contract still, or the old form, take a look at L4 for me. If you look at L4, L4 is different, okay? L4 should say insurance. Most of you guys will have no dates here. I suggest you just make it all uniform and put 7. Okay, so you guys can see that. You guys can take a picture of this or just watch the training video later. Okay, this is if you have contingencies. You could, if you want to remove contingency, you just click this on transactions, not here, right? In transactions, if you just click no loan contingency, right, the days will go away. Okay, but in your template, I want you guys to leave it at 10. Okay, so this should be 10, 7, 7, and then leave it this as 17, and then 7, 7, 7, 7. So make sure you guys know what these contracts says. Okay. Make sure on the second column, these are the paragraphs in the contract that talks about these items. Okay. As you can see, as part of my templates, I already have the CR form checked here. Okay. Because most of the time I'm removing at least one contingency, if not both, if not all of them. Okay. Make sure you guys understand L9. We're seeing this more often, where a buyer will make an offer subject to them selling their old house before. Please download this COP form, read it, okay? But as far as your template, we leave this blank. All right, so.
What is CRB attached? Like, what will be that? It will attach to some form?
Yeah, COP, see this COP?
The CRB, yeah.
COP, right, COP, right? This is if a buyer has a house to sell.
No, about that CRB attached, you said.
Oh, this is the contingency release, right?
Okay.
Yeah, so it will be attached. Okay, so it's going to be part of my forms.
Okay.
I can easily, if I'm going to leave all contingencies, I can easily uncheck this, right? It's no big deal. But as far as your template, I teach you guys to put it that way.
Yeah.
All right. On letter M, don't really need to put anything here, right? Because this talks about, possession. Okay, this talks about if you have rent backs. Okay, so just make sure you understand that. Okay, now if you guys look at this, right, in the old template, this had 1 on every of them, right? So right now, because they changed the forms, I have to input these as 1 again. Okay, why do I want you guys to put it in? I told you guys that on previous training, but basically I want the seller to do these things as soon as possible. Okay, so this is making the seller do certain things. So make sure you read that. Just like up here, most of the things up here is 10 or 7. Okay, 10, 7, 7, 7, 7. Remember, on information access, leave it at 17. Don't put a 7 on that one. Okay, and then on the bottom on N 1, 2, 3, and 4, make sure they all say 1. Okay, all right. So that's page 2. Let's look at page 3. Right, on page 3, I want you guys to check stove and oven. Right, because every house needs one. Okay, you cannot sell a house typically without one, unless you're paying cash. As far as the washer, dryer, refrigerator, and all that, that's all optional. I will check dishwasher because that's usually common there, right? Bathroom mirrors and all that. Now it's up to you if you want to ask for any others, but right now in the template, I only want 3 boxes checked: stove, dishwasher, and bathroom mirrors. Now someone asked me before, what if they don't have a dishwasher? Well, then they're not going to have it because whatever you check here, it's only if it's already currently existing in the house. So if you put here like a video doorbell, like a Ring, and there isn't one in the house, the seller is not obligated to put one in there. So make sure you guys read item 9 of the purchase agreement, because this explains this whole paragraph. Okay. If there's excluded items, it's going to be here. All right, let's look at letter Q. This is where some changes happen. Okay, you can see here, this is unchecked because when the new forms was replaced, when the old forms were replaced by the new ones, not everything transferred properly, right? And so that's why we're doing an update right now. So here, this should say seller. This should say environmental. And again, it's provided by, so I need to check this box. Where did disclosure source come from? Your template, right? But I need to check these 3 boxes: environmental, seller, and then provided by. Okay. The optional wildfire disclosure, you need to look at the NHD report from disclosure source to see if they are in a high fire hazard area. Then you can click buyer or seller to pay for that. Okay. Typically it's seller, but for now, because we don't know what that is, you can check it. Okay. If it's not in that zone, it doesn't really matter. The seller's not going to get it because it says optional, right? So my suggestion is, there's no such report if you're not in that zone. So why are you going to get one? There is no such report. Okay. So for now, as part of your template, to make the offer as clean as possible, we uncheck it, right? Unless you know it's in a wildfire zone. Smoke detectors, right? This should have been seller. See, some of the things did not transfer properly, right? Nothing on the government retrofit standards. Okay. Escrow fee. Most of the time, it's paid by the buyer in Alameda County, right? But if you're writing an offer in Santa Clara, you could put seller. But for now, on this template, I'm teaching us to put buyer. Okay. And then on the county transfer tax, it's paid by seller. On the city, I want you guys to put here, split 50-50, right? Again, that's if there isn't one, then it would be spelling split. Okay. If there isn't one, then it doesn't really apply, but only if there is one, right? So some people put here if applicable, if you want, but it just takes up too much. So I just put here both split 50-50, right? Again, anything that's checked here only applies if there is such a thing. So if there's no city transfer tax, even though you put here both, there would be nothing, right? HOA transfer fees, right? Again, typically these are paid by the buyer. Certs are by the buyer. Okay. So on the HOA transfer fees, it's a negotiable item. But if I'm a buyer, I always put seller. Okay. But I'll remember that later, not right now, because again, if there's no HOA, it just looks cleaner if you don't put one in there. Okay. But
you can write if any. Seller, if any.
You can put that if any, right? I mean, you could, if that's how you want it to look, right? For me, I wait until there's an HOA. I know to remember it enough, but if you want to put seller, if any, right, it's up to you. Yeah. Because again, if there's no HOA, then there's nothing there, right? So, right? So, I mean, you could, but to me, it's up to you. Okay.
Hey, Greg. Sorry. I had a quick question. Doesn't the city transfer tax or any of these other taxes differentiate between county and city?
The county transfer tax is always the same. It's $1.10 per thousand. The city transfer tax, I would say less than 50% of the cities have city transfer tax, and they all differ, right? Although Oakland and Berkeley are the same, San Francisco is different, San Jose is different, San Leandro is different, right? So there are certain cities that do have city transfer tax. You need to get that from the title company or on our buyer guides, okay? We have that, okay?
So that could change that, right? That one?
The split 50,
for example, where you put split 50-50?
It's usually split 50-50. You can have the seller pay for all of it. The buyer can pay for all of it, but standard that is split 50-50.
Got it, okay.
So that's the standard. Just like with escrow and title, it's standard in our area buyer to pay. In some counties, it's standard seller pays, like Santa Clara, San Mateo County.
Greg, can you
It's usually split 50-50. Again, these are customary. It's like, if I ask parole for dinner to go to dinner, who pays for dinner? It's customary, the gentleman. Sometimes it's split. Sometimes the woman pays, right? So again, it depends, right? So there's customary and there's what actually happens. Janaki?
can you share Q2 again, please?
Okay. So Q2, right? So that's how it should look, right?
Provided by.
Q2, right? Because it's optional, you need to look at the NHD report. Okay. So again, we'll talk more about this as we write the offer, right? So as far as here, we don't have private transfer fees typically here in California, right? So home warranty, I put here seller, right? 720 is the minimum, right? We used to put, I think, 600. Now it's 720 is the minimum. I put here Fidelity home warranty because that's the standard. That's in my cover sheet, right? You can have the buyer waive it. Now here, where it says here, I usually will ask, the comprehensive plus plan, right? Comprehensive plus, and I think that's what they call. So whatever home warranty you have, look for the upgraded plan, right? Right. So this is what I do. It's up to you if you want to do the same thing. Janaki, you still have a question, or is that from previous?
Sorry. Let me put my hand down. Sorry about that.
Okay. So that's page 2, right? Actually, page 3, right? So after that, right, you're pretty much done as far as your template's concerned. So there's some things as we write the offer later, I'll tell you what you should be doing, right? On page 4, the main thing you need to understand here is, remember, the RPA can be used for any property that's 1 to 4 units, right? Actually, when it's only 1 unit, excuse me. So if there's a tenant property, occupied property, you need to check this form. If it's probate, you add that. If it's a mobile home, you check that, right? If it's a TIC, like in San Francisco, you check that. So again, this can be used for anything that's 1 unit or less. Excuse me, that's at least 1 unit, right? If he has an ADU, you use this form. If it's a duplex where there's two different separate units, okay, then you use a residential income, okay? Because an ADU is part of the main house, right? So make sure you understand that. All right, so you just check whatever any of these addendums apply, like if it's probate, if there's a trust, right? So please make sure you read all these forms. There's that wildfire disaster advisory form, right? So make sure you guys download all these addendums and read it and understand it, okay? As you can see, there's other paragraphs here. These pertain to the different parts of that grid system, okay? So after that, right, I just want to, there's really nothing to fill out from page 4.5 to the end, okay? There's nothing here, right? So we're just gonna we're gonna scroll down to the last page, right? So I'm just gonna speed this up. But main thing, you need to know what these things are saying, okay? These paragraphs, okay? So make sure you guys read this, even though we're not, okay? If you look at the training that's on CAR, the one that I've been forwarding you guys, they do go through this line by line. So if you want that recording, just let me know, okay? Okay. So the only thing we're double checking here is to make sure on the agent information, my information transferred, you can see here, right? The broker, my phone number, email, right? This all transferred, okay? So after that, there's really nothing else left, for all the other pages. It's just standard stuff, okay? All right, so from here, what we're gonna do is click save, right? Right, and then hit back. Okay? Now we're gonna go back to our list, right? So now we're done with the RPA agreement.
Hey,
Yes.
I do have a question on G1. Is it okay to discuss
Sure.
that at this meeting?
Why don't we hold this on the G1? Okay, what's the question?
The question is, I mean, I don't know that you do have a buyer broker agreement, and assume that you agree for a 3% commission, okay?
Yes.
But then apparently the seller only gives you like 2.5%, okay?
Yes.
And the buyer is not willing to give us 3%, okay?
Okay, they want to make up the other 0.5%, okay?
Yeah. So then, is there a process for us to waive it off? Is there a formal process?
Yes.
Is it
What you're
something-
going to do is get your modification of terms, MTBR.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay.
So when you get this MTBR, this is where you're going to state that the amount of compensation is changed as follows: 2.5% to Interior Real Estate Services as buyer's agent. Got it?
Understood. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so this, as you can see, it's already pre-printed. So that means this form is very important. They already thought about that, including the expiration, right? Because remember, the buyer representation agreement is only 3 months long. Okay,
Correct.
they changed it from 90 days to now 3 months. So if you start today, you can just go, add 3 more months, right? So from July to October, right?
Yeah.
Before we had to count 90 days. Now it's just 3 months, okay?
Got it.
And the renewal cannot be more than 3 months also.
Right.
Okay? So, Yeah, so on the BRBC, it's 3 months is a critical time frame. Okay, so make sure you know that. All right, so that's that.
And this is supposed to be signed by the buyer prior
Yes,
to
the
the
buyer and the agent.
Yeah, that is fine. But at what point in time? Once our contract is accepted by the seller?
No, whenever you want to extend the buyer representation agreement, that's the representation agreement.
No, that is clear. But my question is, assume that we are in a transaction, and the
Yes.
seller is only giving, willing to give 2.5, but the BRBC says 3%, right?
Yeah.
And now you would want to have this modification of terms agreement. Okay.
Yeah.
So at what point in time on the transaction are you supposed to get it signed? Is it
Whenever you agree to lower it.
Got it. And okay, understood.
And that's typically before they accept the contract, right? Or the
Right.
counter offer.
Correct. Got it.
Because
Okay,
that's the time to have that conversation, right?
fair enough. Cool. Thank you. Yeah.
All right, perfect. Okay, so that's that. Okay, so now on the BRBC here, right? Let's go through, you can have it here or you can have it separate, right? But let's just go through it here. And then, so when we cover it later, it should be pretty easy, right? So on the BRBC now, okay, agency is the same, all right? First box is checked, Intero, right? That's all standard, okay? Okay, on the buyer representation, okay, what's being filled out? Intero real estate is already filled out. No date, no buyer name, right? Because this is template. Representation period. We used to be able to put 90 days. Now it's a beginning date and an end date. And then 3 months, remember. So if it's 7/29, it would be 10/29/2024. Okay, so make sure you have the date. There's a drop down, right? So okay, so it should be pretty easy for you to count 3 months, right? 1, 2, 3, right? So we put October here, right? 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 One. Again, we're not going to put it here, okay? So I'm going to erase this, okay? Because we don't want to put it here. So, but on transactions, that's where you would put it. Okay. The one thing I want you guys to check. Remember your homework. How do we make it exclusive? Check that box. So make sure you check A2. We will automatically make it exclusive. Because it's automatically non-exclusive, I want you guys to make it exclusive. So check this box. That's part of your training, right? As far as properties, we're just going to leave this blank, okay? Later on, we're going to need to check, is it a single family, multifamily, right? What county, what cities, okay? Additional description, 3 to 5 bedrooms, 1,600 to 2,500 square feet, right? So again, what is the buyer instructing you to find, what type of property? Nothing else here, right? If there's additional ones, then you can click here, right? Hold on, Janaki, okay? Properties excluded from representation. Now, this is if the buyer already has seen a house with another agent, and if they go to that house, they're saying, hey, if these properties, if I like these properties, I already have an agent for it. So I need to exclude it. Okay, so that's what this is for. Right? So I want you guys to review this because some of these pages changed from June to the recent change in July. Okay. All right, Janaki, question?
For some reason, I was still seeing the old form. But I
Okay.
guess I went ahead and added the new form,
Yes,
and I'm just gonna remove the old one.
correct. That's why I said, some of you guys, if you haven't removed it, right? Especially if you did it last month, right? It will have the same BRBC twice, and then you have to figure out which one's the old, which one's the new one. Okay, so all right. So, and then here's critical, okay? E1. What are you gonna put here? 3%.
3%.
Okay. You can always lower, right? Because now we're putting a ceiling, remember?
Yeah.
Okay. So put 3. Now you gotta be able to explain it, okay? So we'll talk about that later or in another class, maybe tomorrow in our market pulse, in case you guys have objections on that. Okay. Payments received by broker from other. So
Sorry
again,
to interrupt you, Greg, for a
Yes.
second. Has anything changed about this, or is it basically we're trying to get it from the seller, and we could always get less, but if we want more than this, we have to do a new one, correct?
yes, So if let's say you put 2.5 here, and then the seller's offering 3, you cannot get that extra 0.5%. So you cannot, hey, say, hey, I need to change this because seller's actually paying 3. You cannot do that after this is signed. So I want you guys to always put 3. You know, you can put 4 or 5 if you want. But again, you know, the buyer's going to question that. You know, we'll role play a couple things tomorrow, okay? And you know, on other classes. But again, I want you guys to put at least 3. Okay, you can put more, but don't put less. But if you want to, though, it's up to you. Okay, but this is so easy to explain, right? So everything else, the continuation period, put the same days as you have up there, which is 90 days. Okay, okay, you guys should know what this means. Please read 4C, what that means. Okay, so all these paragraphs here in the second column is how, you know, what these clauses are explained in. Okay, so for now, there's 3 things we've done so far, right? Check A2, right? Check it as exclusive, 3%, and 90 days. Janiki, you still have a question, or is that from earlier?
Sorry about that. I keep doing that.
Okay, all right, okay, all right. So okay, so the bottom, right? Time to deliver. Usually this is, you know, within 5 days. So we're like, what is this BFPI? I'm not gonna talk about it. You guys download it so you can see what it is, right? This is new, okay? This was new like last week. You know, there's an option here where the buyer can put buyer does not have sufficient funds, right, to pay the broker, right? Typically, as buyer your template, these will be blank. Okay, you will not be checking these, right? Even in transactions, I would not check it. But some buyers would say, I want you to check that. Okay, that right? I don't have extra money, which is fine. But again, we'll talk about that as far as, you know, how to handle those objections. Okay, other terms.
Sorry, Greg, I had a question. I submitted 2 for my buyers, but they haven't signed it yet. But I didn't include the 90 calendar days.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Well, it's okay if it doesn't apply. But let's say, you know, your BRBC expires tomorrow, right? Technically, after tomorrow, they don't have to pay you. Right? So that's what this is for. Okay. What happens after these many days after the contract or the BRBC expires? Okay. Basically, here you're just reserving to get paid. Right? That's what this is for.
So for showing the houses, we need to get it signed this one first. BRBC.
Yeah. The law says as of August 17th, before you show any houses, you need to have a BRBC form, or what's the other form, guys? What's the shortcut? The 3-page one.
Property representation, property showing representation, PR,
PS.
something, something,
PSRA.
property
right?
showing, yes.
Okay, we're gonna pull that up next. So PSRA, right? So that's the 3-page form, 3-page version of this. Okay. All right. So let's move on. Okay. After this, right? You can other terms could be, you know, whatever could come up. You know, that's not addressed up here, right? But make sure you guys have checked those 3 things, right? We talk about exclusive. And remember, paragraph 15, okay? We're going to get to paragraph 15, okay? Exclusive, 3%, 90 days. Got it? Okay. Now, one other thing that I want you guys to, okay, check here, right? Remember, this is exclusive. So we don't need to put anything here because this is only for non-exclusive, right? Exclusive, cancellation effective 30 days after receipt. So if they tell you, I want to cancel it, right? Then it's 30 days after. So you got 30 days to find them a house. So it's not like immediate, okay? But if it's non-exclusive, you can make it less than 30 days. Okay? So please make sure you guys read paragraph 5 so you understand cancellation. Make sure you read the entire BRBC form, the entire RPA, right? Now the same thing the things that we filled in here, we're gonna fill it in on our buyer representation forms, okay? So it's okay on advisories, right? The BCA is already included as part of the package, you know, the buyer that explains how compensation works. Other than that, there's really nothing else to complete here, okay? So I'm just going to scroll down to 15, that talks about, exclusive. Okay, this is very important. Exclusive representation. If exclusive is checked on paragraph 2A2, which we did, right? Because we want to make sure that we always do exclusive ones. If the buyer doesn't want to do exclusive, you can uncheck it, then this doesn't apply. But make sure you guys read what this says, okay? And we're not gonna read it now, but you gotta check A2, and you gotta make sure the buyer signs this part. If the buyer does not initial here, then your contract is non-exclusive. To be exclusive, you need to check 2A2, plus the buyer must initial here. Okay, guys? Make sure you remember that. Right? You can see here, number 16, your 3% transfers here, right? Automatically, right? So after that, those three things, there's really nothing else. Of course, you just gotta make sure your information transferred because you are, because you are the buyer agent. Okay, this is part of your cover sheet. You should transfer it. Okay, right? Okay, gotta hit save. I go back now. All right, so you got the BRBC form. You got the RPA. Remember, we are in the purchase contract template, right? So we're just, this form is here. Modification of terms, right? In case you need to change the commission, you need to extend it, right, by 90 days or however many days. There's the cancellation of buyer representation, the COBRA, C-O-B-R. Make sure you guys read it. Again, it's dated 7/24 because that's when it was changed. You got the buyer contingency removal form, and then the estimated buyer cost, okay? This is going to be important because now as you need to show the buyer that you know what you're talking about, you need to be able to do a buyer representation, a buyer cost sheet. Okay? So we're not going to cover that today, but I want you guys to, take a look at this, maybe take a picture, and we're going to cover this. Okay. So these are the minimum fees that a buyer will typically pay on a transaction. This is something that's less than $1 million. Okay. It's probably going to be, there's going to be some other things here that we need to complete. So for now, you guys can look at this, watch the recording later, and put these standard numbers as part of your template. But we will do a whole class on buyer cost, seller cost, because you need to know how to complete one of those, because now you really need to earn your money, right? Before, this was an optional thing. I believe it should be a mandatory thing. That's why we've always trained you guys to do more than other agents are doing. Because as a buyer agent, you should know how much the buyer's closing cost should be roughly. Because remember, you're going to get the loan fees in there. You're going to get inspection fees. You're going to get the title fees from the title company. And then whatever cost that may be incurred by the buyer, you need to be able to put it together. And then, do you know how to estimate payments? Right? Do you have a financial calculator, real estate financial calculator? You got to have one, right? Or at least have to know where to get that website, right? Go to bofa.com or your lender's website. They have their own calculator, but you got to know the interest rate and things like that. So we'll show you how to complete this. This is on our Intero YouTube channel. If you just put estimated buyer, you should be able to pop it out. Okay.
Hi, Greg. I see the insurance you put 83, but it does not have that the thing you cannot put in. Where do you put in the 80?
See here, in annual insurance, $1,000. Okay, it's probably going to be higher, but to me, that's what the minimum, right? So again, that's what that 83 is for. Okay. So again, this is under $1 million, right? It should be somewhere around $1,000, but again, I'm probably going to change that to $1,500 when we do the next class. So to show you, okay? So if you want to change this to $1,500 now, right? You could, right? And then you'll see that it does 125. Okay. So this will be the new, these will change, right? Like the home warranty, right? I have here, let's see, home warranty. Okay, remember this is a buyer, right? So there's no home warranty, right? Inspection fees. I think the home inspection fees is probably going to be going up to $750, right? So you guys can, you can update that now, right? Okay. But you guys have the old numbers. That's okay. Keep that there. I think next week we're going to do the buyer seller cost. Okay, because I just want to focus this week on these forms. Okay, so you have that. All right. So let's hit save. Okay. So for your purchase contract templates, at the bare minimum, you should have these forms. Okay. You guys see these, right? You should have these forms: a cover sheet, the purchase agreement, the BRBC form, the modification of terms, the cancellation, contingency removal, buyer costs, right? And then I have here the purchase agreement. Now, if you want to remove stuff, right, it's pretty easy. Just click on it, right? And then you can just hit delete, okay? Oops. I'm just gonna leave this. Okay, right? So at the very least, you should have those 8 forms, okay? I'll put it up here in case those people who are analytical, you can take a picture, right? But you can always watch this recording later, okay? So you should have, these, okay? 2, 4, 6, 7, right? These magic 7, okay, at the very minimum, okay? You can add other forms, like I have the rent back agreement here and all that. Remember, SPBB, right? It's here, right? Now, you say, why is it so much below, right? So how do we move it up, right? Because that should be on the top part. Click on organize, right? When you click on organize, it says here, done organizing, right? What I want to do here is, while it says here, when I click on organize, I want to move it up to maybe, maybe up here, right? By the, maybe up there, right? Next to the RPA, right? So you can move it up, right? You can move things. Now, you got to make sure that you click organize, okay? Because if I try to do that now, it doesn't do anything, okay? I have to click organize, okay? So make sure you guys click on organize, right? Up here. And then you can move things around, okay? You can delete, but you got to make sure if you want to move it up and down, you got to hit organize, okay? All righty. Okay, so that's the buyer representation form. So now let's move on to the next one. Okay.
So we need to get this seller's payment to the broker, buyer's broker.
Yes.
It's also signed.
Yes, because if you want the seller to pay your commission, right?
So it should
now
be
until August 12th, the MLS is, you're protected through the MLS. So, but we want you guys to start using this form now because it's going to be mandatory after August 12th. Okay.
Yeah.
So start using. You
check.
check G3 on the contract on page 2.
Yeah.
This will pull up this form. Make sure you know how to. Okay, it's pretty easy form to complete. Okay. If you look at it, right, the top part will be filled out because you're going to be in transactions. You'll have the buyer, seller name, the other brokers, okay, the other agents, okay. So this will be completed. Typically, you want the seller, the first one will be completed, okay. So you know what that amount is, okay. So you just type in the commission, the 3%, whatever, 2.5, that you want to get paid, okay, based on your BRBC form. Yeah, so that's what this is. Again, well, you guys should know how to read this, how to complete it. It's pretty easy. All you gotta do is just put the commission here, okay? And on your template, you may want to even just put 3 already, right? Because that's what it's going to be when you write the offer, right? So you can put 3% already, okay? So, all right. Okay, so there's nothing else to do here as part of your template. Okay, so you can hit save, and let's move on now to the BRBC form, okay, the buyer representation packet. Okay, we've already gone through most of it, right, in that purchase agreement. Okay, so let's go back to templates, right, forms and checklists. So we just did the residential purchase, right? Now, Dulat asked earlier about how do we want it to apply. When you initially created this, some of you guys did. Okay, let me just show you on when we hit open, right? Oops, wrong one. Instead of open, I want you guys to click on template details. Template details, okay? On template details, this template will apply on purchase, residential, and it says here automatically apply to purchase residential new transactions. Okay, so you should check these purchase and residential. And this packet will automatically apply when you create a new residential transaction. Okay, this is where you do it.
Hey, Greg, question. Is there
Yes.
any plans to have this template be updated again before August 16?
I don't know if it needs to be updated because unless they release new forms, right?
But
if
how
they
will
release
we
new
know
forms,
unless we check it?
we will
every
let you know.
single- Okay.
Because you do read all my emails, right?
Wow.
and your manager's emails, right? Right, guys, right? So if you read all our, yeah, it'll be over communicated. Okay. All right. So now let's look at my template for the buyer representation. Okay. So we did the purchase agreement, which pretty much is done. But I want you guys to just look at the buyer representation. So in case you're not writing an offer, you just want to send the BRBC to somebody, right? As you can see here, right? There's different forms here. Okay. You guys can take a picture of this and you guys can see what these forms are, right? We got the BRBC, right? Remember the PSRA, right? Who said it earlier, right? I forget who it was. Yeah, so this is the short form, right? So we know the buyer representation agreement, right? Let's look at that. We got to make sure this is completed just like the other one, right? Right? As you can see here, there's no the first box is not checked. My agent information is not done. And we're like, well, what's going on, right? Okay. Because, okay, if we go back to our cover sheet, yeah, see, it's all, I didn't check this, right? And remember, if you just want to do a shortcut, right, you need to check that, just like on the other forms, right? Now, we can just pull this form in there if you want, but, sometimes I want to have it separate, right? Like I don't have fidelity there. I don't have, my buyer broker information, right? See the difference, right? So I have to redo this here, right? Now, if I just want to be a little lazy, right? What I can do is just add, these other forms that's in here into my purchase agreement template, right? I can add my PSRA, the open house non-agency. Remember that form, right? This is typically more for the listing agent, right? Or if you're a buyer, if you want to do open houses. So, you guys know about this, right? During an open house, come August 17th, we need to have them sign or at least acknowledge that they know we're not representing them, okay? So make sure you know this form. We saw COBRA, the cancellation, the modification, and this one, disclosure of modification. This is only if you don't want to redo if you already had the older BRBC signed. Before August 17th, you need to have them sign this modification or this amendment, okay? So let me just show you all these forms. You should know all these forms, okay? This property visit and open house, if you're doing an open house and the seller has some recording or audio, video recording stuff in the house, you need to post this form in somewhere as they enter that says, you are being recorded, okay? This is kind of funny because, I have some listings before where my clients will tell me, hey, Greg, you better call this listing agent. His client really likes the home, right? So when I'm showing a house, I always tell my clients, hey, be careful, what you're saying. Wait until we leave the house, right? Because the seller might be recording, right? Especially if they have those if they have the ring, they have those stuff, that there's probably some recording throughout the house, right? So I tell my clients just don't sound too excited if you really like the house, right? But they're free to do whatever they want to do, okay? So that's what this form is, okay? Is to remind people that you might be recording, or there'll be some audio and video recording throughout the house, okay? Now let's look at this PSRA, right? Again, we can bring this in, so that's what I'm going to do, okay? I'm gonna leave this, okay? And we're gonna go into the other one, okay?
Greg, one question here, quick.
Yes.
For the open house visitor non-agency, OHNA form, is it compulsory in addition to your regular sign-in sheet, whatever you do? Is it like optional or?
It is right now optional. We're gonna probably create a flyer or something pre-printed. So the top part of it, okay, this top part of the OHNA, which some of you guys are familiar, right? This top part here, from visitor intention all the way to, visitor. We're probably gonna take this out and just put it in a full flyer that you can put somewhere conspicuous so people can see it. Because again, it tells them, that there's no agency here, we're here just to give information as we talked about this morning, right? So yeah, so we're probably gonna cut this out, and because this bottom part, we're using Spacio, right, to get this information. Because people are not gonna want to sign in usually, so we use Spacio for the bottom half, and then the top half, we're gonna make some sort of flyer, have the office make our MITs create one, okay? So but for now, it's there. You can just have it open, it's fine, but make sure you have them sign in here, right? These questions here should be part of your Spacio, right? What's the people's names, right? Do they have an agent, right? And their email and phone number, right?
Okay.
Tomorrow in our market pulse, I'll give you guys some suggestions. What if they don't want to sign it? What if they want to do Spacio, right? We addressed that in this morning's call. So if you were there, great. If not, watch for the recording later. Okay, so what we're going to do now is pull these forms, right? So that way we don't need this separate one, right? I had a separate one here because for training purposes while the new forms came out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this new bar representation, right? Actually, I'm going to leave this open for now so I can train on it. So, but for this, so if you go to residential purchase, right? Now I want to get the PSRA, right? So if you don't know how to do it, or you don't know the PSRA, if you just put, start repre, right? You can see here, you got the bar representation agreement, the cancellation, modification, right? As you can see here, right? It's not there, right? So if I go represent, it's still not here, right? So what happens? Like, what is that form Greg was talking about, right? Right? Okay. Call me, right? PSRA, right? So that's what that form is called, right? Property showing and representation, okay? Now, remember we said represent, right? Okay. It's not on the top part, right? But if you look here, there it is, right? So when you just put, part of the word and it's in the form name, you just have to scroll down. So there it is, right? Here's the form, okay? So you can either put the shortcut name or find it by knowing part of the name, right? As you can see here, it says possible representation of more than one buyer. Is that the one we're looking for? No, that's not the one we're looking for. It's the property showing, right? PSRA, right? So make sure you click on the right one. So that's the, possible representation. The property showing and representation agreement. So let's look at that. What do we need to do to pre-fill as part of our template, right? Because that's what we're doing. As we can see here, Intero is already pre-filled, part of our template, right? Just like the BRBC, right? Here's the beginning and end. 30 days, not 90 days, right? So you just click, again, I don't know, they have 30 days here. What if the month has 31 days? That's where you still have to calculate 30 days, okay? This is probably gonna say 1 month at one point, right? But right now it's 30 days, just like before on the BRBC, used to say 90. Now they made it 3 months, okay? Because some months have 28 days, right? Or actually all 12 months have 28 days, right? So, but not all months have only 30 days. Some months have 31 days. So you have to, count back one day back. Okay. All right. Compensation, right? Like the BRBC, we want to put 3 already, right? Cancellation rights, right? Effective upon receipt. I would want to say at least 7 days, okay? Right? So on this one, we put 3% and we put 7 days, okay? Got it? Okay. So there's really nothing else.
Modify our existing template and add these forms. So
yes,
we do not need add these forms separately.
Correct. Yeah. Okay. The only reason why I had that before was because these forms weren't finalized yet, so I wanted to have separate, but again, I just wanted to show you. Okay,
Yeah.
so complete that. There's really nothing else to complete, right? Now, later on transactions, right? Right? We need to make sure that this is only for how many properties? 3, right? So make sure we pay attention, right? Property address, right? Okay. What if there's no, well, what if we don't know the property address? No, you do know it because you're going to show it, right? That's what this form is for. When you have 1 to 3 properties already in mind that you're going to show, that you want to start this relationship, right? If it's more than 4, or if it's more than 3, 4 properties and more, or it's a general, you need to use the BRBC. Okay, so this is not a general form. This is more specific form. Okay? This used to be all in one form, but because the agents want to say, hey, can you come up with a shorter form? This is what they came up with. Janaki.
So this would be another form that you should carry to open houses, correct? In case you
I
meet.
don't recommend carrying forms, right?
Okay.
You can carry sample forms, but you can print this, right? But for you cannot print this because you need to have a property address to print.
Right. Okay.
So you can have a sample one, like you can put here, let's say this property address, or to be determined, right? Or just 1, 2, 3, anywhere in anywhere in the Bay Area type of thing. Put a fake address and have one as a sample. You could do that, but again, I don't typically bring forms to to the open houses like I discussed earlier in this morning's call. I would say, great, let me send you the form right now, or let's, circle back after the open house, right? Then we can discuss it, right? But remember, 3%, 7 days, okay? Clear? Pretty easy.
So before showing a property, we need to get it signed and write the property addresses.
Yep. This one, if it's 3 or less.
Yeah.
If it's more than 3, you need the other one, okay?
Which one?
The BRBC.
BRBC.
Right? So before you show any houses, after August 17th, you need this one or the BRBC. PSRA or BRBC. Those are mandatory before showing any house. Got it?
So you cannot handwriting any property address in here?
You can handwrite it, but you won't be able to print it. Right? So if I just put, let's say 1, right? I'll probably be able to print it, right? And then you can white this out. But remember, in real estate, do not use whiteout, right? So, so you cannot print it without an address. It doesn't have to be a valid address, right? Like I said, you can just put 1 and they'll print it. But again, why do you want to do it handwriting, right? That's why I always tease agents like, why? This is so professional, right? And then you can DocuSign it, authentic sign it, digital sign it. So, but yeah, you can print it. You can trick the system because technically, in order for you to print a form, you need a buyer or seller name and an address. Okay. Questions, Janaki, again, or anyone else?
So, hi, Greg. So if there are 2 agents, working together with
Yes.
1 buyer,
Yes.
so how to like?
Yeah. So as you can see here, right, there's only 1 room for agent. So what you're going to do is get the other form called the additional agent acknowledgement, right? The team.
AA form.
Yeah, there's a different form for that where there's more than 1 agent, either on the buyer side or seller side. Then, so that way you're both acknowledged. But for here, it's only 1. Although I can create a text box, but then the DRE, you can put both names, but it won't have a space for it now, right? So I would have to create a text box, right? You guys should know how to do that. But yeah, you can trick the system. Okay, you can handwrite it after you print it. Okay, if you really want that. But the agent acknowledgement is enough. Okay.
Okay, just attach to your BR form, AAA form. Okay.
Great. Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Well,
So
this broker information, this
Yes.
Union City address, I always thought it's Fremont, but it's
it's wherever your office is. If you're from the Milpitas office, where's your license at, right?
oh, so yours is because you're
Out of Union City.
oh, okay.
Branch
So
office.
for us, we just put in the Fremont one.
Yeah, if you're from the Fremont office, if you're from Pleasanton, you can put Pleasanton office, right?
Got it.
Now, if I put Fremont, it's still the same because that's our headquarters. So, but I just using city because that's where I am. Okay, so you can put whatever, any of our locations, that's fine. Okay, because that's all, we're all one brokerage. Okay.
Okay.
Right. So again, just because you're in Pleasanton, that doesn't mean you can't put Union City. You can put Union City because if that's where your listing is, you're going after, you can put that in there. It's fine. No big deal. It's still one brokerage. Okay. Just make sure the broker ID is the same, 015-22213. All right. So now we've done all the buyer representation forms. That should be easy. Now let's get to the listing agreement. Okay. This is totally new, right? All right. So again, let's take a look at it. Again, if you want to create your own listing agreement or listing template, you go to new, right? You got to make sure you're on templates though, okay? That's why this is grayed out. You can create new and you follow the steps, okay? So that's in our YouTube channel, okay? Okay, so let's look at this now. As you can see here, we want to double check our cover sheet. So you have to have a cover sheet, okay? So if you look at the cover sheet, right? These X are checked. No buyer, no seller, right? No property address, right? No escrow. You put escrow, but it will not go anywhere in the listing agreement. So initially there's nothing there. Buyer broker, nothing, right? Because we're not the buyer agent. On the seller broker, we need to make sure we complete this part, right? And make sure it's double check it, make sure it's right. Okay. So make sure on the listing agreement template, this is completed. Okay. So make sure that's done. Nothing else after that. Okay. Now you can put, disclosure source, the home warranty, but again, it's not going to go anywhere on the listing agreement. That's why we don't need it right now. Okay. So we hit save on that. Okay. Okay. The other thing I want you guys to now, let's look at the listing agreement, right? Yeah, let's look at the listing agreement. On the listing agreement, the agency, right? Make sure one of the sellers checked, right? The first one's always checked on your template because there's always one seller. If there's a second seller, you check the other box, right? Or vice versa. And make sure you know what all the agency says. Okay, so in here, no date, no seller name, Intero is there already. Okay, so here's the new grid system. For most of us, this was new this month. Okay, this was changed last week. There were several changes at the last moment. Okay, so let's talk about that. Listing period, right? 24 months. Okay, so you cannot take a listing for more than 2 years. So make sure 24 months. List price is there, so leave that blank for now. If it's a manufactured home, like a mobile home or probate, we click these and we get the addendums, right? So that should be clear. All right, compensation to seller's broker. How much do you want to get paid as a listing agent? Typically it's 3-4%, depend on you, right? Some people will put 6%. Okay, we're going to talk about that tomorrow, but at the very least, you should put 3. Okay. Now, last week there was a place here for, the buyer agent, and for for dual agency. Now, everything about a buyer agent commission has been taken out of all the forms. They took everything out just to be on the safe side of this DOJ lawsuit. Okay, so if you're saying, where do I put for the buyer agent? Or what if I double end it? Right? There is no place anymore. Okay, as far as pre-printed form. C talks about if it's an unrepresented, right? Like they don't have an agent. If they have an agent, they should write on G3 on page 2 of the RPA that they want to get paid. The buyer agent needs to get paid, 2.5-3%, and have the SPBB form and the BRBC as part of the offer. Okay, the BRBC to prove what the commission is, the SPBB to make sure that the seller knows what we're asking them to pay, and the checkbox to make sure that those 2 forms apply. If you don't check that box, if you don't give the SPBB, if you don't get the BRBC, you may or may not get paid properly. So make sure all of those matches. All right. So make sure this is checked already. So as far as additional compensation, it's up to you if you want to put 2.5 or 3%. As far as our templates right now, most of the time I'm going to tell my clients, let's not deal with unrepresented buyers. We want to make sure there's a buyer agent or not. If there is, if you want me to work with unrepresented buyers, the fee will be 3%. Okay. So you could be any number you want. This is if there's no selling agent, there's no lawyer representing the buyer, okay? So this should be the same or different. It's up to you, okay? So check that box. Additional compensation. If you do not check that box, this whole paragraph does not apply. So whenever there's a checkbox for it to apply, you need to make sure you check it, guys, okay? Continuation, what should we put here? At least the same amount of your listing, which is typically 180 days. Okay, minimum. You can put 90. I teach you guys to put 180. Okay. Seller obligation to pay previous brokers. Now, this typically will not apply, but sometimes, if let's say my contract expires, and I gave the sellers a bunch of buyer names that may come back, then in the next 180 days, I'm reserving the right to get paid. So this might be Interior Real Estate Services, / Greg Nasol, right? So it might be there. This is something that the seller must tell the new listing agent, but you as a previous listing agent must tell the seller, hey, these are the buyer names. Please give this to your new listing agent. Okay, so if that happens, guys, if you have a contract that's expiring, make sure you talk to me, make sure this is done properly, okay? This only applies if you put 180 days or something, so many days here, okay? So this is your reservation right, your protection clause, right? After that, it's pretty self-explanatory, right? Like what items is the seller leaving, right? What's in the property, right? E1, E2 is new, okay? Property will be marketed in the following MLSs, primary and other, right? It used to be just a general statement. Now it's a full, it tells you it's part of the grid system. Now this one's new. Seller instructs broker not to take or use photographs for marketing purposes, right? This used to be an automatic thing. Now the seller can actually say, hey, I don't want you to use any pictures, not even the front. Again, we need to have at least a front photo per the MLS, right? But as far as anything else, it's optional with or without, with the seller's permission, okay? So make sure you guys understand E2. After that, again, it's just understanding which one applies, right? Timing for presentation of offers, right? It tells you, all this, okay? You guys should know what these are. Okay? I'm just gonna leave it up to you guys to read it. This was part of the training videos, okay? Please read it, and if you have questions, please let me know. This H, okay, is new, but it's something not new because we've always had where the seller says, I'm only going to sell this if I find a replacement house. Okay, so make sure you guys read the SPRP form, right? Okay, and of course the seller opts out about the lockbox and signs, right? Everything else. I'm going to leave it up to you guys to read the rest of this to apply, to see what applies. After that, there's really nothing else, okay? So again, the main thing that we need to put here is the 3%, 180. Okay, those are the critical things, okay? Everything else is totally optional, okay? Okay. Now, the other thing I want you guys to, for today, is to start using the estimated seller proceeds, right? This is something that we will have a class next week about, and you guys can read this now. Okay? Some of these numbers will change, okay? But this is what our training previously was, right? Like the brokerage fee, right? We used to teach you guys to put, 6% here. You can still do that, okay? Or typically you would put, 3 and 3 if that's what you want to do, right? Again, because we need to unbundle it, right? So the numbers have to be separate now, right? So, oops, put in the wrong place. Not $3. 3%, 3%. Okay, so as you can see, there's no numbers here because we don't have a sales price. Okay, so you guys can take a picture of that or watch it later. Because once we put a sales price up here, proposed sales price, it will automatically calculate. Right. Again, this is template, so we don't put any numbers, no addresses. Okay, so those are the three forms. Okay, it's now 3:16. So what I'm gonna do now is cut it now because we went a little long. But I'm gonna leave it up to you guys to create this template. So tomorrow at 2 o'clock, after our market pulse, we're gonna go through how to complete this. It's pretty easy, right? We are 95% there, okay? But we're gonna update this some more. But for today, I want you guys to make sure what we've covered so far has been done already. And then we'll continue this conversation all week, this week, okay? Okay, so
But
go
I
ahead.
have. I'm sorry.
Hi, Greg.
Yes, Rohit, question?
Yeah, hey Greg, can you show where when you were doing the buyer broker agreement, I think I asked you on the email as well.
Yes.
Can you show if we have to just create a buyer broker without any address, instead of doing it? I mean, I tried playing around with it. If you
Yes.
have to pull a new transaction and then do it, I mean, is there a way that we can just directly just create a buyer broker agreement versus doing the entire new transaction on the buyer side? Because you said it won't print if there's no address in there. So how do we create a blank buyer broker agreement with a buyer?
You cannot, right? Remember I told you guys, you cannot print a form without a buyer seller name and buyer or seller name and an address. Okay. You can put, let's say 1, right? And then leave everything else blank, right? And then print it.
But Greg, in the huddles, marketing huddles on Tuesday, Rishi kept saying that Twinkle had like 5 or 6 buyer broker agreements signed. How would you do that when you don't have an address on it? How can you just do a blanket buyer broker agreement without having an address on there?
Okay, so you have the BRBC, right? Let's use that form, the BRBC.
Right.
So this is the long form, right? This is the 7-pager, right?
Right.
So here's the BRBC, right? Date. Okay, so okay, you can see here, right? There is no address here, right? So you should be able to print this.
No, but how do we create a new transaction without naming a transaction? Like, for example, just go out of the whole thing.
Okay.
Like start from scratch.
Okay, I see.
Instead of being a template.
All right. Okay. So let's say now, so if I meet Rohit today at an open house, and he says, "Hey, I want to hire you, right? And I don't, which properties do you want to see, right? Typically, you would have properties, especially if it's the house that you're showing. But if you don't, right? So let's look at the buyer representation agreement, right? Sorry. So we're going to create a transaction. So I met Rohit at an open house. He says, "Yeah, I want to hire you," right? So let's go to transactions, right? Right. Remember, we're in transactions now. Now we can put buyer, seller names and all that, right? So new, right? And it's a new purchase offer, right? We're going to use that. Okay. Okay. So here, right? The name, right?
Right. That's what I'm saying. That
I don't have an address, so I'm just going to put Rohit.
There's no address there. I mean, there's.
Wait. Okay. So I'm just going to put Rohit Mohan, right?
Okay.
I don't have an address, right? Right.
Yep.
Now I'm going to use residential, right? So that way it will use my template, right? Here's my template, the purchase contract template, right? Because now it's residential new, right? Because if I didn't check residential here, let's say it says other, I don't have a template for it, right? So click residential, right? So there's a template, it automatically finds it. I hit save, right?
So essentially, you have to create a transaction out of it. Not, you can't just like do just a form for every bar. You have to create a purchase transaction.
You have to have a transaction.
Got it.
You don't have an you don't need to have an address on the transaction, right?
So how can you print it?
Okay, so now I want to look at my documents, right? So here's the cover sheet, right? Now I need to have a buyer name, right? So I need to put Rohit, right?
Now I get it. So I mean, I just wanted to know how you do it. So we
Right.
just have to create a transaction. That's what I wanted to know.
It
Pretty much.
must, because if you just pull the forms, it's gonna ask you which transaction do you want to put it in.
Right.
Then you can do something, but it has to be in a transaction.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
So yeah, so now here, right? So as we said, I can pull the the BRBC form, right? The buyer representation compensation form, right? So there it is. Right, so here, right? This is the form, right? Representation period. Remember, you have to, in real estate, you have to have a beginning and an end date, right? If you don't have an end date, it's a voidable contract, right?
Right.
So we just, so we just put basically, 3 months because that's the maximum, right? Okay. It's already exclusive, automatic. We need to put what type of property you want, right? Typically single family. You want to put some counties and some cities. I'm going to leave it up to you guys to put that in, okay? Let's say now here, right? What if there's only room for 5? How do I put 10 cities?
I mean, it will automatically create an addendum if you keep typing, right?
Yeah, yes, it will create a text overflow form.
That's right.
So you just type, okay?
Hey,
You
one
don't
more
need
question,
to-
Greg.
Greg,
Sorry.
sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry, Rohit, go ahead, please.
Yeah.
One more question, Greg. So when we're doing an open house, now I got this point, so thank you for that. If you're doing an open house, which is obviously starting 17th, we'll need let's say if you're doing an open house, a buyer, potential buyer walks in, they don't have no idea about this new change, and we have to have that sign-in sheet that, hey, do you have any representation? If they say no, then we can have them fill out. Now we could potentially, we could put the address of the property we're hosting. Then we can print out from these, right? We can obviously put the addresses in there.
Okay. If you have 3 properties or less, you can put addresses there on the PSRA form, right? That's the short form of this. This is the 3-page one. Okay. This is the 7-page buyer representation agreement. There's a shortcut to this, which is 3, if it's 3 listings or less, if it's 30 days or less, your representation time frame. Okay. So that's the PSRA. Okay.
Right, but there's another form which is at the open house if somebody doesn't have. When somebody's walking in, we have to ask them, right?
Yeah,
And
the
we don't
open
have to
house
sign it.
non-agency form, right?
Right.
So we talked about that earlier. Yeah, you asked, again, the purpose of that is to explain to the buyer that we are only representing the seller. We're here to give information. If you want our help, right, let us know, right? That's this form here, right? We talked about that earlier.
Got it. Thank you.
Right, so this form here, right? This is the form that we're talking about earlier. Okay, so this is what Rohit is asking. Okay, this PSRA. Where do I pull it?
And that.
Yeah, so this is the form, right? Representation agreement, okay. Okay, this is the shortcut, right? So the open house one, yeah, that just tells the client, hey, there's no agency here. If you want our help, let us know. As I said earlier, when you guys watch this video again, on that open house non-agency form, the office will create the top half, so you can post that somewhere. And the bottom half where they input their information, we're going to use Spacio for you. You guys should be using Spacio to complete that information. Okay. So, but that, yeah, you have the right to ask for it to be signed. If the buyer doesn't want to sign it, you've completed your obligation by law, because you asked them about the question, do they have an agent? And if they don't want to talk about it or they don't want to sign it, it's okay. But we've done our job. There's no confusion that we are their agent, the buyer's agent. Okay, that's what that form is for. Okay, so I'm gonna leave the rest of
Can I ask one question about the BRBC?
I'll answer your question. Let me wrap up here first, okay? So make sure you guys, I'm gonna send this link, the recording probably about 5 o'clock tonight. Please watch it before tomorrow's market pulse meeting. So if you guys have more questions, we can answer it there. Tomorrow at 2 o'clock, we're gonna continue this conversation, completing this. as you can see, it's pretty easy to complete, right? The purchase agreement is easier to complete if you have the template. The listing agreement, it's so much easier now than before. The buyer representation agreement and this PSRA is pretty easy to complete. There's just a couple things. But again, if you have your agent information already pre-filled, everything else is pretty easy. Okay, so let's wrap up with some questions, and then in case you guys have questions,
Yeah, Greg, a question.
you guys can ask away. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm gonna answer a couple questions on the recording, and then we'll stop the recording and continue with conversation if you guys want to. Okay, so let's say I think it was Megan. Question?
Yes, Greg. So on the BRBC form on G1, it says time to deliver buyer personal financial information within 5 days from the execution of this agreement. Does it mean that they have to provide me like pre-approval or whatever within 5 days after they sign this?
Yes, that's where you ask them, hey, yes, that they need to. Although typically it's going to be before we even start the conversation, right? So,
okay.
right.
Okay. And if you scroll down more to the page where it says buyer's investigation advisory.
Yes. Okay.
That one has the first line is property address. But if
Yeah.
we're just representing them in general, like, do we need to sign and filling any address in there?
No,
This is when they do the purchase agreement, right?
correct. It would automatically fill it out.
Okay. Okay.
This
thank-
is this shows up in many parts of the different packages. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. But if just the BRBC, we just started our,
Yeah,
client.
just leave it blank. It's not needed.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? I think there was one more hand earlier, but I guess they're gone. So, yeah. So if there are any more questions,
Yes,
please.
I have one.
Yes, Ranji.
Yeah. So when we click on 3G3 and SPBB, a form is attached during the last Thursday meeting with Alex. So she mentioned that it is going to be a contingency, the buyer broker compensation. It's going to be a contingency. So, but where in that form it is written? Do we need to put in other additional terms that seller or a listing broker needs to is obligated? Not obligated means this offer is contingent on seller or listing broker compensating the buyer's broker.
I don't understand. Okay, so
Can I clarify that?
Okay, yes.
Yeah, sure.
Basically, the question is, a lot of agents are negotiating or asking the seller, doing their presentation and saying to the seller, would you like to provide anything to the buyer's agent of compensation? In June, it was there. July, it's not. Where would we list this if the seller's willing to pay a buyer's broker?
As a listing agent.
As a listing.
As a listing agent, right? Okay, let's look at the
Yes.
listing agreement, right? As a listing agent, right?
Yes.
Okay, so let's look at the form, okay? So,
And I think Amy had the same question in the chat box. Can we put under additional terms,
yes,
seller willing to provide buyer agent compensation?
right. And that's why I told her is you can put it in there, okay? So what has happened is, I have all my forms. Okay, what has happened is, I have all my forms. Okay, see, this is where sometimes the system, let me reset. Yeah. Oops. Okay. So on the listing agreement, right? Yes, last week. Okay. There were 4 commissions you had to put. Seller's broker on the listing side. Seller's broker if you double lend it, right? So I mean buyer's agent commission if you double lend it. Buyer's commission if it's single agent on each side, right? Like a CSO like we had before. And then unrepresented buyer. Today, there's only 2 things. Listing broker's fee, right? Which is like 3% or so. And then unrepresented, which might be, the same or 0. I have a feeling they're going to bring back the CSO at some point. Until they figure out this DOJ thing, right? About having compensation to the buyer's agent anywhere in all the forms. So they decide just take it all out, okay, because of this DOJ thing, okay? I believe it's gonna come back. Just like there's a couple of things that I've requested that they do also. It's like, this doesn't make sense. You guys, like the 30-day thing on the PSRA. Why was one 3 months and this one's 30 days, right? It messes it up if there's 31 days. We have to -1. Those little things. But bottom line is, the forms are ever changing. These are standard forms that they recommend. We don't always agree with it. So to answer your question about, as a listing agent, where would I put the commission for CSO if the seller wants us to market it, or we want to tell the seller, hey, this is what it's going to be. We can just add it on our other terms on the listing agreement. There's a box there, and towards the bottom says other terms. Hopefully you guys can find it. Just put it in there. It's the only place we can put it. Because right now we're waiting for guidance on where can we put it. Because one rumor is we can't put it anywhere, right? Right now the DOJ says we can't put it on the MLS, but I think it's getting closer to where we cannot put it anywhere except maybe on our flyer, maybe on our website. Who knows? We don't know where we're going to be able to do it after August 17th or later. But for
Right,
now,
and I wanted to just say one other thing. On the cheat sheet form, it said cooperative compensation remains legal and individual brokerages may have their own policies, but is no longer included on the MLS or the CAR forms. It does not say that we cannot write it under other. And I guess, is this more of a question for legal? But at the same time, she says brokerages may have their own policy when it comes to cooperative compensation, if a seller agrees to be cooperative and provide compensation.
great. So, well said. So again, we're getting guidance from this, right? Right now, if we put in other terms, to me, that's where I'm putting it. Okay, that's where I'm telling agents to put it. If you don't put it down, you need to at least tell the seller that, hey, the commission is probably going to be, the buyer agent's probably going to ask anywhere between 2.5% to 3%. Could be different. We'll have to see. But once we get that offer, I will give you a net sheet that will tell you what the terms are. Okay. If it's me, I want to put a percentage already. I wish we could put 6% on the first part, right, on the seller's broker, but it's specific. It says seller representation only, right? So I would want to put on the other terms, guys, because I want to have this conversation now at the listing appointment rather than when we have the offer. Because there's a chance, I would say 20% chance that I'm probably going to double end this deal, unless you don't want that. Okay, then don't put anything on other terms, but you should put something on other terms. Okay, so other terms is where it's the place to put it. All right, are we good? Yeah.
Thank you.
General question, Greg.
G first.
Yeah, a general question for either the BRBC form or PSRA, whether its representation period to be 90 days or 30 days. Is it like automatically extended to close of escrow if that happens?
Technically, yes. Right. Although it would be.
We're not assigning anything else if it's extended just into escrow.
Yeah, I would suggest you extend it. Okay, but technically, you went into contract before it expired, so it should, continue on. The reason why we tell you to extend it is, what if it falls apart? Right. 1/3 of the deals out there fall apart. So we would teach you guys to extend escrow, extend the expiration of a contract. That would be the best practice. Okay.
For that, just for the extension of the contract, it's a different form, specific form to sign it.
The modification of terms form. Okay?
Oh, thank you.
All right, modification-BR for buyer representation. All right, anything else? Tinasha, anything you want to add, or anybody? Are we good? Okay, so tomorrow we're going to continue this conversation in our Market Pulse. Okay. And then, of course, tomorrow at 2 o'clock, we're going to continue completing this form since we ran a little long today. Okay. So Anything else? Do you guys have a question about? Otherwise, give me a call, or we'll see you tomorrow at 12 o'clock and or 2 p.m. on a separate Zoom. Okay. So anything else, guys? Janaki? All right. Before I answer Janaki's question,
Sure.
I'm gonna let me stop it here. So oops, wrong one. Okay, go ahead, Janaki.
So this coming Thursday, are we going to have the same in-person meeting?